Diabetes Connections is brought to you by Dario Health. Manage your blood glucose levels, increase your possibilities. By Gvoke HypoPen, the first pre-mixed auto-injector for very low blood sugar. And by Dexcom. Take control of your diabetes and live life to the fullest with Dexcom.
This is Diabetes Connections with Stacey Simms.
This week, Thanksgiving is almost here and many holidays just around the corner. Ask the D-Moms is here to help. Moira McCarthy and I answer your questions and share our own stories to help you make more wonderful memories with less stress, even if that means doing things differently for a special occasion.
And the reality is, in this long lifetime marathon of diabetes, you need to just chill a mile here and there. And by doing this and saying to your children, we're going to turn this off, this is okay, don't worry about it, you're fine, you're modeling that for them, and you're giving them the confidence and the courage to know that they can be okay.
Yeah, she said, turn this off. She's talking about something I dared to say and do about Benny's CGM. We also talk about long car rides, well-meaning relatives, and holiday gifts centered on diabetes. This podcast is not intended as medical advice. If you have those kinds of questions, please contact your healthcare provider. Welcome to another week of the show. I'm your host, Stacey Simms. Always so glad to have you here. You know we aim to educate and inspire about diabetes with a focus on people who use insulin. And yes, this time of year, the holidays are stressful without diabetes, right? But I'm already seeing in my local group the stress ratcheting up. Somebody said to me the other day that they feel like even though they're not necessarily doing more than they did before the pandemic, as more people are venturing out and traveling, they feel like they're really busy. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that we haven't been very busy for the last year and a half, really. So there's going to be more pressure on this holiday season. There's going to be more travel. There's going to be, it'll feel like higher stakes. And especially if you are new to type 1, that first year, those first holidays, those first milestones are incredibly stressful. So Moira and I are here to help you out. You probably already know, but just in case, Moira McCarthy is a dear friend of mine. She is the author of many books about raising kids with diabetes, including the amazing Raising Teens with Diabetes, which has that fabulous photo of a teen rolling her eyes right on the cover. I love that cover. You'll hear how long her daughter Lauren has lived with type 1. She's a very successful adult now living on her own. And if you are brand new, my son Benny was diagnosed almost 15 years ago. He is almost 17, which is really hard to believe. So most of my stories have to do with the early years. We're not out of the teens yet. And Moira will help kind of pick it up from there. And I always look to her for guidance as well. One funny thing about Thanksgiving this year, we have a set menu, right? We have our traditions. My husband is the cook in the family, and we've always hosted Thanksgiving. He does something a little different every year, but it's really up to him. But Benny has been working in a grocery store for the past 6 or 7 months now. And he is really jonesing for a sweet potato casserole with marshmallows, which we don't usually do. Nothing to do with diabetes. It's just not our style. We generally save the marshmallows for dessert. But my mom, who makes our sweet potato casserole every year, has valiantly stepped up and says she will make one for him because at the grocery store, he has been seeing the display and he's like, Mom, it's just sweet potatoes, brown sugar, sweet potatoes, marshmallows, sweet potatoes, brown sugar. Like they have this whole, and he took a picture and then I saw it the last time I was there. It's one whole side of a produce display. So this poor kid, he is really dying for that. That marketing worked on him. He wants those marshmallows. My daughter is the canned cranberry sauce person, right? You make that beautiful homemade cranberry sauce with the whole cranberries or you boil it down. No, we have to have it in the can with the jellied lines on it. I prefer that as well, I have to admit. All right, Moira and I talking about real stuff in just a moment. But first, Diabetes Connections is brought to you by Gvoke HypoPen. And our endo always told us that if you use insulin, you need to have emergency glucagon on hand as well. Low blood sugars are one thing. We're usually able to treat those with fast-acting glucose tabs or juice. But a very low blood sugar can be very frightening, which is why I'm so glad there is a different option for emergency glucagon. It's Gvoke HypoPen. Gvoke HypoPen is pre-mixed and ready to go with no visible needle. You pull off the red cap and push the yellow end onto bare skin and hold it for 5 seconds, and that's it. Find out more. Go to diabetes-connections.com and click on the Gvoke logo. Gvoke shouldn't be used in patients with pheochromocytoma or insulinoma. Visit gvokeglucagon.com/risk. Moira, welcome back. I am so excited to talk to you. And what a week. I didn't even think about this when we planned it. This is a big week for you and Lauren.
It is. Yesterday, October 28th at 2:35 p.m. was exactly her 24th diaversary. My daughter has had type 1 diabetes for 24 years. I can't even believe it. It's crazy.
It is. But I have to ask you, the time? How do you know the time?
So I don't know why I know the time. We were at a doctor's appointment and I know what time the appointment was and I know what happened when I got there. So I don't know. It's just drilled into my head. And then there's people I meet that are like, I can't even tell you what day my kid was diagnosed, but for some reason it just stuck with me. And as a little kid, Lauren likes celebrating every year. So I sent her flowers yesterday.
Aww.
No, I don't care. 24 is worth it.
So do you mind maybe just a little bit of how she's doing? If maybe just a little update if this is someone's first time joining us for DMoms?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So my daughter Lauren was diagnosed, well, I just said the date. So basically the beginning of kindergarten when she was 6 years old, right after her 6th birthday. I can remember feeling like the world was going to end. But we had a really great medical team from the beginning who were saying to us, you are going to live the life you lived before. We're just going to add steps to it. And Lauren at 6 years old was saying, I'm going to lead. You're not going to, let this hold me down. Now, has it been all rainbows and butterflies? Absolutely not. We've had challenging days. We've had challenging weeks. We've had challenging years in her teen years. But right now, I think, well, first of all, what everybody cares about most is her physical health. She is 100% healthy. She has the labs that a person without diabetes would have if you checked, her kidney and her eyes and everything else. Emotionally, she's really doing great. She has a long struggle with burnout, but I think she really has figured out a way to deal with that when she recognizes it coming up. And the most important lab of all, I always say, is she's incredibly happy. She has an amazing career and lives in the middle of Washington, D.C. all by herself. And I don't follow her on Share and I never worry about her. She has 8 million friends and I couldn't be prouder of her in the life that she is building as a young adult. So that's where she's at. Pretty good, right? Despite diabetes.
Despite diabetes. I love hearing that. As you know, and as you listen, you may know, I have followed Moira and Lauren's story for many, many, many years since before Moira and I knew each other. So I always kind of look ahead. It's like my time machine of what could happen with us. Where could Benny go? And of course, he's never leaving our hometown and going to a scary place far away like DC. He's always going to live here. And
a Sunday dinner every week. Isn't that nice?
That's so nice, though. I'm glad she's doing so well. I'm glad you're doing so well. And, gosh, I heard something recently about diaversaries that made me smile. Instead of the diaversary year, you're on the new level. So Lauren has reached level 24.
I like that. That's really funny. And her boyfriend is a big video gamer, so he'll like that too.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, Benny's approaching level 15. And I am one of those people who I always have to look up the date. I just know it's the first weekend of December, but I never remember the date.
Yeah.
All right. So we are in that time of year where it's not just our kids' diaversaries. It is holiday time. And after I reran the Halloween episode that we did a couple of years ago, and I got a lot of questions and people asked us to do a follow-up for Thanksgiving and looking ahead to, the winter holidays. And I got some great questions. So I was wondering more if you wouldn't mind sharing, though, the first holiday season that you and Lauren, your whole family had to address this. You guys were on a very different routine.
Yeah.
Which made it a little bit more difficult. But would you mind sharing what that was like that first year?
I will. And I think it's good to hear because it can help people see how far we have come in daily care for this disease. We may not have a cure yet, but what it looks like on a day-to-day basis is completely different. So Lauren was diagnosed in October. So Thanksgiving was our first big holiday. And I remember we were going to my in-laws. And back then you took a moderate acting, we called it long acting, but it was really middle acting insulin called NPH that peaked a bunch of times during the day. And then you took regular, which you had to take it, wait 30 minutes, and then eat exactly what you had dosed for it at exactly 30 minutes, which was super fun with a 6-year-old child, I will tell you. And no eating in between. So I had reached out to my in-laws ahead of time and asked them if they could work the meal around the time that it would work best for her to eat. And they said yes. And I moved some things around with the doctor to kind of compromise with them, so we changed what time we gave everything, starting like 2 days before to be ready for Thanksgiving. And then we showed up and they were like, oh yeah, we decided on a different time. It's like, oh my gosh, the world is ending. But the world didn't end. We figured it out. We got through it. What I will say for these holidays, for people who are new to it, it's not always going to feel this scary and confusing and daunting. I think the first 12 months, you go through every holiday, every special event, every family tradition for a first time. And then the second year, you're like, oh, I remember this from last year, and it gets a little better. And then the third year, you're sailing. That's my theory, and I'm sticking to it.
I would absolutely agree with that. I also kind of suffered, and I'll say suffered, from this feeling out of the box that it had to be perfect. Because I remember wanting to show everybody that we were okay, especially my mom. I wanted her to not worry and know that we were just fine. And for some reason, that got tangled up in my brain by thinking this has to go perfectly and I can't make a mistake. And of course, that lasted about 3 seconds.
Yeah. Well, really, with a toddler with type 1 and you want to put together a perfect Thanksgiving? Huh?
Yeah.
Huh. Why do we do that to ourselves, though, But feelings of control at a time when you feel like you've lost control.
No, exactly. All right. So let's get to some of the questions that came in. I got one in my local group, and this was about travel. And the question was, we're driving a long distance. And I guess we could talk a little bit about flying or other modes of transportation. But in this particular case, we're driving a long distance, 6 or 7 hours to a relative's house. Any ideas or tips for helping me? And the question here was about stable blood sugars, but I'm also going to kind of throw in there, how do I make this trip easier on the whole family?
Yeah.
I have a lot of ideas, and maybe you do too.
Well, so I guess my first idea would be for special occasions and events, stable blood sugars aren't the most important thing ever. I don't think there's anything wrong with trying. Of course, we want to try. But the first thing I'd say is if it doesn't go perfectly, that's perfectly fine. I am quite sure if you ask your medical team to help you with the plan, that is one of the things they will say to you. That's the first thing. So, what did you do on long car rides? For us, I don't remember it impacting her blood sugar that much. You definitely have to have snacks in the car, and like more than you ever think you're going to need in your life, because you never know when you're going to get stuck in a traffic jam from a car accident or something like that. You know what it is. Be prepared, and then you don't need it. We tend as a family, not just for the person with diabetes, but for everyone, to try to stop every 60 minutes and get out of the car and stretch and move around and breathe fresh air and then get back in. I think that helps us. How about you?
That's impressive. We don't, my husband would have a fit. No.
So would my father. He would never do that. That's probably why I do it. I grew up driving from Minnesota to Massachusetts and like never being allowed to get out of the car. So
I would say for us, we actually did struggle a lot with long car rides because we did a lot of trips, especially to my parents in Florida, which is like a 9 or 10 hour road trip. And we found that Benny's blood sugar would go very high. Just an hour or two in the car. And looking back, it's probably because toddlers never stop moving. Right. So his insulin dosage was all based on constant activity. So when he was sitting still, just looking back, that's my assumption. Also, as you mentioned, everybody's eating in the car. Right back to our conversation. But first, Diabetes Connections is brought to you by Dario Health. And, we first noticed Dario a couple of years ago. We were at a diabetes conference, and Benny thought being able to turn your smartphone into a meter was pretty amazing. I'm excited to tell you that Dario offers even more now. The Dario Diabetes Success Plan gives you all the supplies and support you need to succeed. You'll get a glucometer that fits in your pocket, unlimited test strips and lancets delivered to your door, and a mobile app with a complete view of your data. The plan is tailored for you with coaching when and how you need it and personalized reports based on your activity. Find out more, go to mydario.com/diabetes-connections. Now back to the D-Moms. And I'm talking about what we did when we realized Benny's blood sugar would always go pretty high in the car. What we did was talk to our endocrinologist about adjusting doses, giving more insulin when he was in the car, giving more insulin for food when he was in the car. And that was a real trial and error for us because, you have to be really conservative about that. You're not going to be changing basal rates by enormous amounts. And so it may not, quote unquote, work the first time you do it. But I think, we're talking about stable blood sugars. I hope what this person means is like maybe kind of sort of in range. When I see somebody talk about stable blood sugars, I usually think like it's not going to be a steady line at 95, right? We're just trying to keep them from skyrocketing and staying there. And even if that happens, which happened to us a ton, it's fine and you fix it. When Benny was younger, when the kids were younger, I was much more mindful about healthy eating. They're 19 and 16 and it's like they buy half their own food now anyway. I don't know what they're eating. But we used to get coolers, like a big cooler, and fill it with, healthy fruits and veggies and hard-boiled eggs and carrot sticks. And, and then of course everybody would want to stop for fast food and ruin everything.
Right. So I made the assumption, and perhaps I shouldn't have, that by stable, she meant within that range. If this mom is suggesting that her child should have a straight line across, my answer is quite different.
Yeah, I have no idea.
I'm going on the assumption that what she means is within their range. And my answer was based on that. What I meant was if you go above your range or below your range, I think it's okay. I don't think that if you're going to celebrate with a family, the most important thing is staying in your blood sugar range. I think the most important thing is enjoying the time and loving your cousins and running around and having fun and staying within an area that is safe. And by safe, I mean, you don't need to get in an ambulance, I guess. And maybe my advice would be talk to your medical team, take some ideas that we have on your idea. I think that's a great idea. My only caveat would be the doctor's probably going to want you to err on the side of your child being higher the first time you do this. As you mentioned, you did it after some trial and error. I'm not sure a new parent to diabetes should just, dial way up on their kids' insulin because they're going to be in the car for 9 hours. I think you should take it slowly and go a time or 2 or 3 and see what happens and then make decisions like that after that. But for now, talk to your team. They're going to say what I said and they're going to support you and say, don't worry about going out of range. You know how to do corrections. Here's when and here's why to do a correction, and then take it from there.
And like you said, some kids sit in the car and nothing happens, right? They don't go super high.
That's
so
why
you can't do it in advance.
That assumption, right? That's why you have to wait and see what happens.
One quick thing about the car that I learned the hard way, you mentioned about, be prepared for traffic, be prepared for, delays. If you have, and we all do, I think, have a diabetes kit, make sure it's where you can reach it, especially if your child is very young, right? I mean, there's a lot of kids that are older. They can have it in the back seat with them. They'll never forget packing everything we needed and leaving it in the trunk or like the way back of the minivan. And then we were delayed and I'm like, I need a new inset. Like say it was leaking or we'd like crawl through the car. It was.
That's a really good tip.
So put it up in the front seat with you. Even if you just pack a couple of things. Oh, we had so many car adventures. Okay. The next question. I loved this one because I could picture this one and I know you can too, Maura. So Deborah said, we are in the first year of diagnosis. I just realized I don't know what to do about our Christmas cookie tradition. We make a bunch and give them to relatives. We usually eat as we go. Can we still do this with diabetes? The child is 8 and is on multiple daily injections, so no insulin pump yet.
So my answer is eat all the cookies, bake all the cookies, visit all the friends, have all the fun, lick your fingers if you want to, but then wash your hands, have all the fun. And check in with your child's doctor. And what they're going to say is go do all that. Check at the end of all the fun. If you need a correction, here's what we'd like you to correct. And here's what we'd like you not to correct for. They may not want you to correct because sometimes these things involve a little adrenaline high. And again, first times you have to see what's going on. But just have all the fun. Fix it later. If your child gets high during it, it's no big deal. If they get low, you've got cookies. There's an old saying. It started with Kelly Kunick, who's a very well-known person on the diabetes world on the internet. And she said, people with diabetes can't have cookies, ... with poison in them.
Right.
Those are the only cookies you can't have.
I think that's fantastic. And it took me back listening to that about, we don't have a Christmas cookie tradition. But we certainly, I think most people with little kids love to bake. And it's just such a fun activity to do with them. And in the first couple of weeks with shots, it was so difficult. Benny ran away from us. He didn't want anything to do with it. But after a little while, he didn't really care as long as we didn't make a big deal and make him stop what he was doing. So, and we bolus after, which I know is like bananas that people admit to bolusing after these days, but I think it's so much less stress.
I think it's really super smart, particularly with a small child.
Yeah. And so for something like this, like we would bake and then I would kind of try to estimate, like, what did he lick the spoon? Did he eat the crumbs? You know, and you do a guess. And in my case, I would always guess a little less because he was teeny tiny. And then we would eat the cookie and a couple hours later we would correct and move on. Now, I don't know. I feel like the fun, as you said, the memories of that time, you know, outweighed the quote unquote out of range blood sugar. I'm sure his blood sugar went out of range and he might have been low because sometimes they just get really excited and, you know, he might have been high, but they're healthy.
You know what I think this mom and anyone who's considering these kind of questions over the holidays should think about too. When I look back on Lauren's life, these 24 years with type 1 included, I don't remember that her blood sugar went high or low. I don't remember what her diabetes did one day. I remember that the cookie swap was fun. And so that's why I think it's important to focus on the fun within reason with a kid with diabetes, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's a great way to put it. And I'm realizing as Benny gets older, I have a lot of those same feelings. I'm so glad it didn't stop us. I'm sure at the time my heart was pounding, right? Especially at first. I'm sure I was worried. I'm sure I was thinking, am I doing this the right way? But looking back, you know, you have those fabulous pictures and those great memories. So that's a great way to put it. All right. So let's talk about well-meaning relatives. Hi, Moira and Stacey. My aunt thinks she knows everything about diabetes. She has type 2 and is always lecturing me about not letting my second grader eat, quote, bad foods. Holidays are the worst. I'm sorry to laugh because she wants us to have sugar-free desserts. There's so much going on in that question.
Bless her aunt's heart, right? You know, I mean, what do you do? It would depend on what kind of person she is and if they have a relationship that she could. I would call her ahead of time and say, look, we're working on adjusting Stevie's life, whatever the child is. And there's a lot of things he's dealing with right now. So I'm just asking you, if you have anything you want to say about it, could you say it to me now over the phone before we go? And let's just avoid talking about diabetes other than, hey, how you feeling? I'm really glad you're doing well at the holiday because I don't want him to feel sad when he has all this on his mind.
That's a great way to put it.
Who knows what she'll do?
Right. I mean, you have well-meaning relatives who want to help. You have nosy relatives who think they're helping. It all depends. My mother, for the first year or two, she makes one of those sweet potato casseroles, not always with marshmallows, but it's got a ton of sugar in it. And so she made it sugar-free. And I didn't really notice, but it's not something Benny was going to eat much of anyway. Yeah. I mean, he was 3 at his first Thanksgiving with diabetes, but she meant well. Yeah. But what I found worked over the years, and I still use this, even though he's his own advocate now, I really found that saying, our doctor says, which I made up, but our doctor says helped everything. So I would say to somebody like this, oh, you know, thank you so much for thinking about my son. I really appreciate it. I got to tell you, things with diabetes have changed so much now. And our doctor says that he can eat these foods. And as long as we can dose with insulin, you know, we know what we're doing. He's helping us. Or our doctor says that Thanksgiving should be a day like every other day or whatever it is. But people who would never listen to me listen to what my doctor says.
My words for that was always her medical team.
Yeah.
Sound very official. Her medical team is me, but they don't need to know that. The one thing I'll say, though, is it's also okay if it's not super aggressive and really out of line. I think it's also okay to teach our children to show some people a little grace. And sometimes in all this, even when people are wrong, maybe at the family Thanksgiving or Hanukkah or whatever party isn't the time to say it. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, great point.
And so if someone makes a sugar-free thing and your kid hates sugar-free, you say to your kid, please just put a tiny slice of that on your plate and then push a couple pieces around under something and it'll be fine. They meant well.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And then afterwards you can say, hey, he really liked that, but FYI, next time you don't even need to do that. Make the same delicious pie, but you don't need to make it sugar-free.
Yeah.
Right?
Not everything. And that's such a good point because we're so in our society today, we're so ready to fight. We're so ready to be on the defensive. And so I think that that's a great point, just to be able to say, we really appreciate it. We know how you meant it. Just thanks. And then have the discussion later on.
Yeah. But if they're over the top aggressive about telling your child what they do wrong with their diabetes, then you need to have a conversation ahead of time. That's
right. Or, even in the moment, if sometimes you see, I made this for these kids who don't have diabetes, and look at this wonderful vegetable plate I made for your child. Like they're having cupcakes, but you could have the carrot. Then it's okay. Just
Jell-O jigglers. My daughter was like, do I always have to bring a tray of Jell-O jigglers? This is before rapid acting insulin.
That is so funny. I'm so sorry. I forgot all about it.
Sugar-free Jell-O jigglers. Woohoo.
Oh my gosh. Okay, another question. How do I dose for all of the grazing that goes on during Thanksgiving and holiday gatherings? This is kind of similar to the Christmas cookies.
Yeah.
I would think our answer is going to be, but in some homes, right, it's not just one set meal. It's we showed up and we're starting to eat and we don't stop for 7 hours.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's my house. Isn't that yours? Isn't it? No,
wow. We don't do that.
I thought every house was like that on a holiday. Seriously, this is interesting. All right. Well, I guess I'll answer this first then. Talk to your medical team. Ask them about planning different times during the day for check-ins. And then just let your child have what they're going to have. And at the check-in times that you agree with your doctor, it may be every 2 hours, it may be every 3 hours, it may be twice. I don't know. They'll help you decide. You see where they're at. You look at what's going on, what they're going to be doing next, and then you do a correction if correction's needed. That's it.
I'm going to add a layer to that.
Yes, please do.
For those who are addicted, I don't know anyone like this. I certainly have never been like this. Anyone who's addicted to their Dexcom. So if you're listening to Moira thinking, how am I supposed to check every 2 hours when the Dexcom or every 3 hours, whatever I'm listening to Moira thinking, how am I going to check at those intervals when my Dexcom is blaring every 5 minutes? Okay, stay with me, people. Consider turning your Dexcom high alarm off. And then look, and your child's Dexcom high alert off, and then only looking at it as recommended by your care team. It will take away an enormous amount of stress. Even if your child goes high and you bolus, it's not going to happen right away. You know this. It takes a long time for insulin to work, right? So you're not really doing yourself any favors by checking it every 5 minutes. I know it's hard. Ask your doctor, but that has helped me more than the years when I was glued to it, listening for those alarms.
And I think that's really wonderful advice, because there's nothing wrong with freeing up the family to enjoy a good time. If it's so important to you that you keep them in a certain range and you want to watch it all day, then go ahead. But I think what you suggested and what you just said you do is such a good model for your child, because as you care for your child, you're modeling how they should care for themselves later. And the reality is, in this long lifetime marathon of diabetes, you need to just chill a mile here and there. And by doing this and saying to your children, we're going to turn this off. This is okay. Don't worry about it. You're fine. You're modeling that for them, and you're giving them the confidence and the courage to know that they can be okay if they're not doing, 150%. So I love that answer, Stacey. You get a gold star.
Yay. It's funny to think about, but that's actually how we use Dexcom and how everyone used Dexcom until, I'll probably get the year wrong, but until, let's say, 2015, because Dexcom Share did not exist.
Right.
So at school, our child, like many others, basically used his Dexcom receiver as a no finger stick monitor.
Right.
So at the times of day where Benny would normally have done a finger stick, he just looked at the receiver or showed it to his teacher, and that was it. We started using it like that. So I think it makes it a little easier. If you come home from the hospital, like a lot of families do, attuned to every alarm, these things may seem like an astronomical ask, but you really can do it. And I would also add with the grazing, we were grazing experts, because I had a 2-year-old with type 1 who was diagnosed, a few years after Lauren. So, was not on that very regimented timing. So Benny could pretty much eat all day like a normal 2-year-old. Obviously not all day, but you know what I mean. Several times a day. And we just had to give him fast acting. So it does make it a little more difficult, right? But it's not something you do every single day either. So I think that, you've got to kind of let go a little bit, but it's not harmful and it can make these, like you said, these wonderful memories. All right. And finally, this question, I'm a little stymied by this one.
Ooh,
what's a
I'm
good
intrigued.
Christmas present for a child with diabetes?
Okay. A good Christmas present for a child with diabetes is what they put on their Christmas list.
Yeah.
If you want to give diabetes-related gifts for Christmas, that's all good and fine. I knew someone who gave their child, quote unquote, their insulin pump for Christmas. And their heart was in the right place and the child felt great, but it just made me a little sad. I guess if your child puts insulin pump on their Christmas list, though, that's different. But even then, I think I'd say, no, Santa doesn't need to bring you medical stuff. We can just get that whenever you need it. There are toys and animals and things like that if someone's interested. And actually, Diabetes Mine is having me do a list of them that's going to run in late November, early December. We can link that on this after.
Oh, that would be great. Like the American Girl doll stuff and the Heroic Kid kits. Fabulous.
And I don't mean that there's anything wrong with that stuff. I just think that you should give your child gifts that they want as a child, not as a child with diabetes.
Yeah, I think a lot of that depends on how your family celebrates and what gifts you're giving. We joked in our family for Hanukkah, when I was growing up, you would get everything from the toy that you really, really wanted to the dictionary that you did not ask for to the socks that you needed, right? So if your gift giving is like that mixed up and it's, if your family expectation is that kids will get super useful stuff and all the kids, not just the kid with diabetes, then I guess I could see it. But I'm with you. I think unless it's something really fun, like one of those, I don't know what your list is going to be made of, but like one of those stuffed pancreas, like a little smiling pancreas.
Cool.
Right. Silly things like that. And, accessories for dolls and fun stuff. It's just like a useful medical thing. I think you've got to be very careful and know the child. Like, especially a parent to a kid is one thing, but if you're like the fun aunt or you're the family friend thinking this will be a big hit, I'd just be a little careful. One of the things I saw in another group was, there's a newly diagnosed child. What should I get the family? And the most popular response was, don't get them anything, quote, diabetes related. Get them fuzzy slippers and a gift certificate for babysitting or, a trip to the movies. Get them something fun and engaging.
Get them something normal. And pushing back on what you said, I still, even if my family did that stuff, I still wouldn't give my child like a box of syringes.
Oh, God.
Or I would, if you're giving your kids toothpaste for Christmas, because that's what you do, then give your kid with diabetes toothpaste for Christmas too.
Yeah.
Treat them the same way you treat your other kids when it comes to gifts.
That's a good point. I'm trying to think if anybody ever gave Benny any diabetes related gifts. I mean, no one would ever, my family would have ever done that, but.
One time in our family Yankee swap, I used a syringe box like for the gift and whoever opened it thought it was syringes and were like, I don't get it. And I'm like, oh, for goodness sake, it's just a box. Open it up.
Is a Yankee swap like a Secret Santa?
Yeah, kind of. But you could take gifts away from people.
Oh, like a white elephant?
I don't know. I'm sorry.
That's all right. Listen, you're sorry.
I don't know what a white elephant is.
I'm the Jewish lady trying to.
It's like we're from different worlds, Stacey. White elephant.
You New Englanders.
Bless my heart.
We do have one funny story. So on Christmas Day, I'm looking back already. This is 8 years ago. So on Christmas Day, we started the Dexcom, the very first time we ever used the G4 Platinum. Ooh. Benny was 9. Oh, no, the G4 Platinum Pediatric. So Benny was 9 years old. And we were sitting around on Christmas Day at my mom's house like you do. And we said, let's start the Dexcom. Why don't we'll put it on. We had been instructed on how to do it. Of course, again, I don't know if I can emphasize this enough. We do not celebrate Christmas. I don't think I would do this if we celebrated Christmas. But we put it on and I will never forget because that was, Christmas Day. Gosh. So yeah, Merry Christmas, kid. That was when it had the big, horrible inserter too.
But then he could have Chinese food before the movie, right?
Were you in my house?
I know you.
That's great. So normally at the end here, we talk about where we're going in the diabetes community. Of course, there's no diabetes events going on now, and I'm really, really hoping they come back next year. But I mean, I'm doing some virtual events. I'm reaching out, but I cannot wait to be in person again, Maura.
I feel you. I can't believe I was just thinking about this the other day because my Facebook memory was, I guess, right before the pandemic. I was in Buffalo, New York, speaking at a big diabetes event at this time. And there were all these pictures and people posting about interesting things they learned and how happy they were to be. And I was like, oh, I want to go back somewhere. I think we're going to see things start bubbling up. I do believe Friends for Life is going on this summer. I'm hoping I'll be there. I haven't heard yet, but I know that's probably happening. And I think JDRF is going to start doing some smaller half-day programs in the near future, knock on wood. So I hope we're in the same place too, Stacey. That's what I hope. Not only we get out and speak, but you and I are in the same place speaking.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Because it's all about us.
Well, why not? I was kind of pausing because I don't remember when we last saw each other. We'll have to look that up.
I
Put
know.
that at the end of the show.
I think it's been at least 2 years, Stacey. That's really weird.
It
right?
has to be. It has to be.
Yeah.
Oh, I miss you.
Me too. We talk every day practically or text, but I miss you as a human life form.
Well, the next time we get together, we can do a Yankee swap.
and a white elephant.
And a white elephant.
Yeah, yes.
Well, if I don't speak to you, have a wonderful Thanksgiving. Enjoy your family and your adorable grandchildren. And give Lauren my best and tell everybody we said hi.
Same here. And make sure those kids of yours know that I still think they're awesome.
You're listening to Diabetes Connections with Stacey Simms.
I will link up some information, including to an episode we did with adults with type 1 and their take on Thanksgiving. I'll put that in the show notes along with the transcription for this episode. You can always go to diabetes-connections.com. Every episode starting in January of 2020 has a transcription, and there's lots more information there. I got to tell you, Moira and I make it sound pretty easy now, right? But those first couple of years, it's so stressful because you're trying to have a nice holiday. You're trying to project confidence. We're doing great. Diabetes won't stop us. And then you're freaking out. What did you eat? Should we pre-bolus? What's going to happen now? Am I going to be up all night? It's so, who's got the carb count? Is it accurate? Spoiler, the carb count is never accurate. It's never accurate. I hope you know that. We're estimating everything, even packaged foods, even somebody who weighs and measures everything. It is a total guess on carbohydrates. So just do the best you can. And you got to get through that. I think you've just got to get through that experience. There is no other teacher like experience in diabetes. You've got to make mistakes. You got to be upset. You got to be worried. You got to get through it. But if you let yourself, I think as a parent, you really can get to a place where you're like, sure, marshmallows on sweet potatoes. We can figure that out and go from there. And if you hated my advice to turn the Dexcom off, let me know. I would love to hear from you. You can yell at me all you want. Let me know if you try it, though, and if it works for you. I don't want to cause more stress. I promise. Diabetes Connections is brought to you by Dexcom. And hey, listen, I'm all about using the technology in a way that helps you thrive with diabetes. So when I say turn it off, it's not a knock on Dexcom. It's sharing how we use it to help us make great choices, live well, and be happy. And I stand by that. We have been using the Dexcom system since Benny was 9 years old. We started back in December of 2013. And the system just keeps getting better. The Dexcom G6 is FDA permitted for no finger sticks for calibration and diabetes treatment decisions. You can share with up to 10 people from your smart device. The G6 has 10-day sensor wear. The applicator is so easy. I have not done one insertion since we got it. Benny does them all himself, which is a huge change from the previous iteration. He's a busy kid. Knowing that he can just take a quick glance at his blood glucose to make better treatment decisions is reassuring. Of course, we still love the alerts and alarms and that we can set them and turn them off. How we want. If your glucose alerts and readings from the G6 do not match symptoms or expectations, use a blood glucose meter to make diabetes treatment decisions. To learn more, go to diabetes-connections.com and click on the Dexcom logo. A couple of quick housekeeping notes. We will have a regular episode next week. Our regular episodes air on Tuesdays, so we will have one for you next week. We will not have an In the News edition of Diabetes Connections Thanksgiving week, though. I will not be doing that live on Wednesday, and there will not be an episode Friday, the 26th. I will say, if anything really big happens, if we get an FDA approval, something like that, I'll probably pop on and give you an update. I know we're all waiting for some things, so I can't promise I won't do it. It's like the news person in me. I've been doing this since I was 19. So if something breaks, I'm going to have to jump on. Even if Slade is making turkey behind me, we'll figure it out. But right now, again, this week, the week of the 16th, we will have the regular In the News on Wednesday, which will become an audio-only podcast on Friday. Following week, we will have a regular episode, but there will be no In the News episode Thanksgiving week. All right, with that, thank you to my editor, John Buchanan from Audio Editing Solutions. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Stacey Simms. I will see you back here for In the News this week. Until then, be kind to yourself.
Diabetes Connections is a production of Stacey Simms Media. All rights reserved, all wrongs avenged.